What's good, YouTube? It's your boy DJ LiftOFF with the JP Way, and you don't want to miss this flight. Today, I'm going to be discussing why learning scratch patterns are so important, and then what are your next steps after you've learned a whole bunch of different scratch patterns. But before we get into it, let me just give you a little bit of backstory, then I'll explain why it is so important. So when I first started learning how to DJ, the only thing that I particularly was focused on was learning the actual scratch technique. So the baby scratch, chirp scratch, transformer, crab scratch, tear scratch, scribble, all of these different techniques. But even though I was learning them, and as I started to get them down, I wasn't able to put them together cohesively into a scratch pattern. That's when I started thinking, what can I do to make these scratch techniques sound better and come together? That's when I headed to YouTube, started looking up the Jazzy Jeffs, Miles Medina, Qbert, Scratch Bastard, Puffy, so many different DJs. I would just pull up a performance of theirs, and like I always say, if you've seen previous videos, set the playback speed to 0.75 or 0.5 and just go over their scratch patterns very slowly until I can understand it and put it together myself. Now, I did that for a very long time, and I ended up learning maybe like 14 or 15 different scratch patterns. And as I started to learn more, like once I started to get to like 7, 8, 9 scratch patterns, I started to forget scratch patterns 1, 2, and 3. So I always found myself going back and forth. Like once I got to 8 or 9, I'm like, I can't remember really what I was doing on scratch pattern 1. So literally I went back, relearned scratch pattern 1, 2, and 3, kept doing it all the way till I got back to 8 or 9. And it was just like a constant loop of going back and remembering scratches and then just forgetting them. But a beautiful thing came from this. In the midst of going back and forth, I actually started to blend different scratch patterns together just naturally, not even on purpose. Like I could be on scratch pattern number 5 and then out of nowhere, I would start putting in elements of scratch pattern 2 just because everything was so jumbled up in my head and I couldn't remember which one was which. But like I said, this allowed me to kind of make my own scratch pattern using the different scratch patterns that I learned. So that right there brings me back to the initial question. Why is it so important to learn different scratch patterns? Learning these scratch patterns gives you a foundational base of the techniques and how to put these techniques together. Whether it's with the tear, chirp, transformer, whatever scratches you're doing, when you watch the pros do it and you just emulate what they're doing, it really gives you that foundational base set, skill set of scratching to understand, okay, this sounds good with this sounds good with that. And then eventually, as you continue to learn these scratch patterns and you continue to practice and practice and practice, hopefully kind of the same thing that happened to me could happen to you, where eventually you start just kind of blending these different things together, which also leads me to the next question. What do you do next after you've learned so many scratch patterns? Just turn on your controller, fire up your turntables, and just freestyle. Try to put different scratch patterns together without actually thinking about it. So once you've learned like 6 to 8 of them, I think even that's enough. Maybe if you've learned 7, 8, maybe even 10 of them, just go on your DJ board or your DJ controller, your turntables, whatever you have, and just start practicing without actually thinking too much about it. I mean, of course you want to understand like what you're doing in your movements, and you honestly should naturally kind of remember some of the different patterns just from doing them so many times, but just see what you come up with. And then if you're not really comfortable with freestyling, go ahead and just actually think about, okay, this is scratch pattern 1, this is 8, this is 3, this is 7. See how you can creatively put them together on your own to kind of create your own scratch patterns, because essentially that is what's going to push you and make you a better scratch DJ. It's not really just about doing the scratch patterns that other people have already done. Those are just literally to give you a better understanding of how other DJs have put things together. But ultimately, you want to be creating your own scratch patterns. You want to be able to just freestyle, and it should really come as second nature eventually. All in all, that is why learning scratch patterns is so important. And like I said, after you learn them, see how you can creatively put them together and just continue to push yourself as a DJ. You can never know too many scratch patterns. You can never practice enough. I mean, don't kill yourself trying to practice, but at the same time, never feel like you've reached a ceiling to where you're like, okay, there's nothing else I can do. There's always something new that you can learn, always a different way to be creative. So just stay at it. I hope this video helped you. If it did, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you know the next time that I upload a video. And without further ado, I appreciate you for sticking around if you made it this far. See y'all in the next video.